Hello again, everybody. We've got the privilege of talking with Alec Shumate, who is a combat artist for us. We've sent him recently on an adventure, but I'd like to ask him first about some of his previous adventures. He's got a very colorful sort of backstory as an artist. And so, Alec, take it away and give us a bit of your background.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to be here and share a little bit about what I've been up to this year and the past couple of years. As you mentioned, I've kind of been able to fit being a field artist into a variety of different aspects of my kind of work and career. And I've had some opportunities to do work in the field, not just with the Marine Corps, but with some other institutions in kind of informal capacities with groups like the Explorers Club in New York and the Adventurers Club in Los Angeles. So here's just a few photos of kind of some of my work in the field. In 2018, I got to go down to Brazil and meet with a remote tribe down there, the Matisse tribe. And I was along as the expedition artist and had a lot of great learning experiences there. One thing I'm sure you've realized as a field artist as well is that art really is kind of a universal connector of people, more so than even photography. I've seen plenty of photographers in plenty of parts of the world that kind of walk through unnoticed, and the camera just kind of drops away, for better or worse. Sure. But I've found pretty much without fail that no matter where you are, if you pull out a sketch pad and start doing a drawing of somebody, you're going to start to gather a crowd of people who are interested in what you're doing, what you're up to, which can be really a great tool, especially if there's language barriers or cultural barriers between military and civilian, or remote tribes and people coming in from the Western world. So this is just some of the field work I did. I think I mentioned to you as well at one of the last symposiums that anytime you go out into the field, especially kind of an extreme environment, is a great learning experience. And I learned firsthand why Prismacolor wax pencils are the gold standard for field pencils.
Really?
On this trip, on this trip in particular, the pencils I brought were water-based because I'd hoped to do some watercolors and then draw over them with water-based pencil. And due to the humidity, they just completely melted in my pack. So wow. It was just a gummy mess of just kind of like pasty pencil. I couldn't sharpen it. The best I could hope for was kind of to mash it on the page. And from that point on, like many of the artists in the program, I've defaulted to just using a handful of Prismacolors that seem to be able just to stand up to just about anything.
Sure. So this is for this. Is this work with the Adventurers Club, or what? How did you secure this gig to go down to a tribe?
Yeah, so I'm a member of the Explorers Club and the Adventurers Club, two organizations that kind of do similar things. And this was actually a second part of the Explorers Club trip. They had gone down in February to kind of start off the expedition, and there was a bunch of returning members that went back down in October. And just by affiliation there and kind of reaching out and seeking out opportunities, I was invited to come along, and was just really humbled to be there. And I think the intent was, in terms of bringing me, was just to kind of bring a different dynamic. I know that there were several other members of the trip that were filming a documentary. Wow. And so just having the art there to kind of supplement. I've heard that it potentially, might be worked into the documentary at some point when that comes out. Oh, nice. But even just have the kind of the cultural exchange. I brought down a bunch of extra pads and paper and pens and pencils for the kids to draw, and it just kind of gave it a different element, which is very cool to see.
Color.
There's a few watercolor. You can see that the paper itself just got, from the humidity, just became a potato chip wrinkled mess. But so you may do with what you had.
What nation was this in again, did you say?
This is Brazil.
Brazil. Wow. Rainforest, huh?
Yeah. And then another trip that I got to do shortly after that went to Cambodia. This again was with the Explorers Club. And we were going to be paddling down a big section of the Mekong River, doing some water sampling. I don't know anything about water sampling. So again, I was kind of there to fill a roster seat and also to just kind of, again, contribute art to the eventual expedition report. Oh, nice. And, it all comes back to that same kind of spirit that I think all the combat artists have, where you make artwork wherever you're at. And I think part of the fun part of being a field artist or a combat artist is kind of the challenge that you're not always going to be in a studio. You're not always going to have the ideal conditions or time to create a work of art. You kind of have to just make do with wherever you are. So in this particular case, we were bouncing down the road in a tuk-tuk, and I had started a piece when they were doing a cultural interview. They were doing ethnographic surveys, I believe is the term, where they were interviewing locals about changing environmental conditions and tourism conditions. And I had started this drawing, and then we had to pack up our stuff, hop in the tuk-tuks, and I was determined to finish it. So as we're bouncing down the road, I'm very carefully trying to handle my line work without it getting too jittery.
So it's called a tuk-tuk? That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like the little motor taxis. And you can see there's some of the line work, if you look up close, is a little bit shaky because that road
that's the one you're finishing.
Best road.
Ah, yes. Well, in Haiti, they have those too, and they're called tap-taps. So that's very interesting.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
And what medium is this? Is this watercolor? Obviously, it's a little pen and ink.
These were Copic markers.
Okay.
So as I kind of still get my my bearings about me, I know when I go out, I bring a bunch of different tools. From the pencils to sometimes a few markers to some watercolor sets, and I never really know what I'm going to try yet. I'm still kind of experimenting with stuff, and so depending on I don't know what side of the bed I woke up on that morning, I might try something different.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's just a little, So as we were going down the river in our pack rafts, we were stopping in lots of little villages along the way, kind of doing homestays in these remote areas. And again, it was the same kind of dynamic where they didn't even speak Khmer. They were speaking regional dialects. And we had one translator with us who kind of spoke some of the dialects there, but he was being split between the 10 people on the team who are all doing different research projects at any given time. So again, the sketchbook became a great tool of just kind of connecting with people non-verbally. Anytime we were sitting around and they had a kind of an elevated platform in the center of the village where they'd welcome us and we'd all sit cross-legged and share some drinks and kind of converse as best we could. And my go-to move was always just to pull out the sketchbook and start sketching the village leader, the elder, whoever. And a lot of times, they became gifts in some cases. Sure. Just a little thing to leave behind and to help kind of endear yourself to the people that are, sharing their hospitality with you.
Nice.
Yeah, just one of the little sit downs.
Wow.
And these are just a couple other, sketchbook. As we were going down, we were also seeing some, ruins and whatnot. So anytime I saw a cool relief or sculpture, I tried to get a quick sketch as well.
So it seems like that you've been sent to a lot of jungle places. Really heat.
Yeah, I'd be eager for someplace a little bit colder, maybe. Someplace that's not going to melt my pencils.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, now this gets us to something recently that's very fitting with what we're doing here in this virtual setting. And can you basically give us the background of this?
Yeah, so I'm based in Los Angeles. I know most of our artists are kind of East Coast, but we do have a contingent of a couple of us that are out here on the West Coast. And obviously I'm very close to Pendleton and 29 Palms and that kind of sphere of the Marine Corps world. And I had heard just through social media posts that as the hospital ship Mercy was coming to the port of Los Angeles as a contingency against potential overcrowding in the hospitals with the COVID pandemic, that a detachment of Marines from 29 Palms is going to be going there to provide port security. And it was as simple as reaching out to you, and you helped facilitate on your end, and we were able to set up a day when I could go out there and kind of watch what the Marines were up to, meet with some of them, and do some artwork for the museum as this kind of big historical event unfolded right in our backyard.
Yeah, I remember it was as simple as you say, as contacting them, but as you remember, it became this logistical thing when we were kind of getting passed off from person to person and back to the Navy and then back to the Marine Corps, and then they'd remind us that, oh, you've got to follow the CDC and the distancing and the masks and the stuff, and then they'd say the same thing when they passed us to the Marine Corps, and then finally, of course, we had a date to be on the ground, and luckily we were able to get you there. I'm glad you're living by the way too. Makes it easier.
Yeah, well, it was great to get down there, but I mean, yeah, you're exactly right. And based on my limited experience and my only other real mission I've done for the museum so far was last year when I got sent to Miramar. But that was a pure Marine Corps mission. And the change in tone, and I'm sure a huge part of that was the pandemic and the security issues with that. But Miramar, we were getting on flights and had unprecedented access, and we're able to go and ask the OPSOs of all the squadrons, like, hey, what training activities are you up to this week? Can we tag along? Can we watch? Can we observe? And, you know, it really felt like all you had to do was ask. And then in this case, I guess, because we were also working with the Navy, there were a lot more security concerns. And the way it ended up, unfortunately, is when I got there, I was relegated to a pretty tight little space in this parking lot where they were checking in ambulances coming in to bring patients onto the ship. So we had a couple Navy guys come out, and it was a really interesting interplay of different organizations that were at work. But I was kind of posted up there with a handful of Marines that were, like I said, checking in ambulances coming in from the city. And I was given very strict limit lines on this one. But it was still, you know, being there and kind of seeing this unfolding situation from the ground level, I have to imagine was emblematic of a lot of similar situations. I mean, even in that short time I was there, you could see all the similar things unfolding. You know, you had these junior Marines there, and, you know, there were rumors about what was happening on the ship. I think at that time it had been announced that some of the sailors were sick with COVID, and
scuttlebutt.
They were all kind of rumors going back and forth, and you know, trying to figure out what the situation was, how bad this was going to get. These were infantry Marines. I think another thing that happened is the initial unit that I was going to be down there to cover got rotated out like a week before.
I remember that I suddenly was in contact with this other Marine officer, public affairs, and it's a different unit. And I'm thinking, what happened to the old guy? How did we get, so yeah, it quickly rotated.
Yeah.
So here's a sketch.
And, what's that?
So here's a sketch we have.
Yeah. And so, like I said, I think that, you know, the best sketches are the ones that you kind of do there in person. I know we have some fantastic artists that, you know, do fantastic paintings, and I would love to experiment more with that myself. But most of these pieces were just done on site as you know, the events were unfolding around me. Although in this case, you know, it was a pretty static day. But still, you know, like I said, it was interesting to see, you know, the different ambulances coming through, and, you know, just to spend some time with the Marines, and, you know, to kind of just, you know, they played a lot of games, you know, as they were sitting around and rotating out shifts. You know, I picked up on a couple games they were playing to keep themselves entertained. Lots of talk of, you know, experiences they had out on the ranges at 29 Palms, and, you know, where they might get to go next, and all that kind of stuff. So it was a really interesting experience to be there and with these guys who, for all intents and purposes, were on the front lines of this, even if they, you know, couldn't fully understand what that meant at that time.
Yeah.
And all of us were just trying to figure out what was going on.
So were you literally like 6 feet away in a stool sketching these gentlemen?
Yeah. So we were all, you know, very distant, and I came in there with my blue rubber gloves and my N95 mask, and was all bundled up, and sanitizer in my pockets, and was, you know, very, you know, especially in this case, definitely wanted to assure everybody, the Marines and the Navy, that I was not going to be a problem. I was not going to be, you know, posing any kind of exposure risk to any of the Marines or sailors there. And really, I was just there to try and document for the museum.
Yeah. And when I remember when I was talking to the Navy, I was trying to assure them, you know, we'd love to get on the ship, but we are here mainly for the Marine Corps art program. We're not here to necessarily do Navy, although Gail, I'm sure, would love to get some images, but yeah, we tried to reassure them, no, he's just going to be sketching the Marines. It's not, you know, because they were really, this was early. Well, was this April, or was this, what, you remember?
This was April.
Yeah, this was April. So we were still pretty early in the pandemic. And so nobody knew a lot, and it was all very much, they had to really make sure that we were not just going to be wandering around, obviously.
Well, I think the situation, even with those hospital ships, was very fluid. I think around this time, and again, a lot of stuff was happening very quickly. But the hospital ship in New York, which initially was not supposed to be taking COVID patients, they were having, you know, such an influx of cases that I think they began taking on COVID patients as well. And so I seem to remember there being similar concerns in LA in terms of, you know, the hospital ship really didn't know how it was ultimately going to be used.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, it was a lot of back and forth.
this sketch right here, this is Prismacolor.
Yeah, these are all Prismacolor
Okay, so this is a
pencils.
black, okay, black Prismacolor, basically. What paper
Yeah.
are you using, may I ask?
I'm using the I'm blanking on the name, but it's the moleskin
Oh,
pads,
okay, sure.
which again came recommended to me by a lot of the other artists as being great. I think they're acid free or at least museum quality paper.
Yeah, it takes the Prismacolor really well.
Yeah, and they're really rugged. I mean, they can stand up to a lot of being thrown around in packs and whatnot and still hold up. And then another interesting thing that I thought was great, and again also speaks to marine culture, is there was this dynamic of the Marines were there, as I understand it, to kind of provide security for the sailors and help the shore activities.
Mm-hmm.
And then the port police of LA were there to provide security for the Marines. So there was this kind of circle of responsibility going on. So as I was sitting there drawing the Marines, there were a bunch of port police just kind of off my back shoulder and a couple cruisers that were kind of keeping an eye on things. And as the day went on, the Marines went over and started to mingle with the port police a little bit. And this officer in particular had been a former Marine.
Oh, good deal.
And
yeah,
and he started kind of mentoring some of the younger junior Marines about civilian careers and his life after the military, and giving them advice on law enforcement or other industries they might look into. So again, one thing I've always appreciated about the Marines I've been around is that they're all teachers. You can see now that even after leaving the Marine Corps, this former Marine continues to teach the junior Marines.
Nice. And there we go. Yeah, the very thing. I'm glad you're captioning. Let this be a lesson to other combat artists, of course, and I think most of us are doing, they're in the habit of it. It's good to see names on there, dates, and what's going on. The curators are happy with that, I'm sure. Yes.
And here's the fun. As I said, it was difficult to get a really good sight line of the ship because access was so restricted. So in some cases I had to kind of post up across the street and kind of intuit what things were looking like. I remember in one case I tried to get close to get a couple of reference photos of the ship, and I think I scared a police officer a little bit. I said, "Hey, I have no real evidence to back this up, but I'm with the National Museum of the Marine Corps. I've been given permission to be here by Captain so and so or whatever, and I'm doing art, and I was just hoping to get a couple reference photos for the ship." And she kind of gave me the side eye and said, "Okay, we'll make it quick and then get out of here." And so I was able to get a few, and but yeah, they were being very cautious security wise and making, and especially, I don't know if you remember at that time, they had that very bizarre incident with the derailed train, where supposedly the train conductor was trying to ram the train, which was 100 yards away, into the ship. So I think for multiple reasons, they were very jumpy about security across the board.
All right. Well, do you have anything to add as far as your experience? Things that lessons learned, something you want to tell fellow artists or that sort of thing?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned so far, and like I said, I'm a very junior artist in the program, but even though in this particular situation there was a lot, more strict regulations in place, the fact that I was there at all really came from just having the curiosity to ask. Yeah. And you've always been a great resource. The program's always been a great resource for putting the artists in interesting places. But whether it was at Miramar, asking to get on flights that we didn't initially have any plans on being on, or going down to do some art, even if it's not the ideal, but you would hope, getting some art of these hospital ships. I'm just continually encouraged by the fact that it's really, we, even as artists, and especially me as a civilian, do still have power to kind of to shape the program, to influence where we go and how we get there and what we do when we're there. And I'm going to continue myself, and I encourage any other artists that are either currently in the program or might be in the program in the future, to remember that you have just as much influence in finding your missions and assignments as anybody else. And it helps just to go out there and chase them down.
Very well said. Well, with that said, thank you very much, Alec. We're going to now go to live question and answer. So thanks once again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Hello, Alec in the flesh. And by the way, I want to say, Alec has been behind the scenes along with Kelly, running the videos and helping with the presentation. So we owe him a lot for the technical assistance as well.
Yeah, happy to help.
Good
It's
deal.
been great. I think it's all come together really well.
So does anybody have any questions for Alec? If you do, you can unmute yourself or raise your hand or something like that.
Raising my hand.
All right.
Alec, where do you hope to go next?
I would love to go anywhere. I mean, any opportunity to do work with the Marines or any of the branches is always a ton of fun. The whole time I was at Miramar, and I think John would agree, we were kind of pinching ourselves that we even got to do what we were able to do down there. But I would love to go someplace abroad. You know, I know we've sent artists before to places like Iraq, Norway, Africa, Afghanistan, any place like that. And, you know, kind of what Kurt was saying, I know I'm a civilian and that there's a lot of logistics at play with the COVID stuff and just general liability, but as close as we as artists can get to the action that is still going on in the world, that's where I'd like to be. So, but I'm open and up for anything.
Is my microphone on?
Yes, sir. Go for it.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to, this is less a question than just a comment. You know, Alec and I were at Miramar, and I just want to point out that there were a few points where we we had everything planned, and then all of a sudden the plans fell through, and I was trying to be polite, you know, and we were asking, well, why can't we do this? Can't we do that? And came up with, you know, no, you really can't do that. And so I kind of had given up, but Alec just, he kept pestering him, asking questions very politely. Well, what about this? What about that? And finally, we were allowed to go into an area that previously had been described as, oh, the roads are all washed out. There was a flood. You can't get in there. Nobody's got any vehicles. And so just his example of persistence. That was a good lesson from that whole trip.
Well, I think too, both of you guys' temperaments are ideal. There's a proverb that says a gentle word can break a bone. And both of you have this wonderful way of sort of nicely, you know, getting and then the next thing you know, they're doing what you want. And there you go. You're on a flight refueling and sketching from the back door of a C-130 or whatever that was. So that's a good thing.
That was a lot of fun, that whole assignment.
Okay, one last question. Anybody got a good question? Somebody asked a question about immunizations because you seem to have gone everywhere where we might need one.
Yeah, I got a pretty long list of them. It seems like anytime I want to travel somewhere that the immunizations are as expensive as the plane ticket. So yeah. I've got a pretty long punch card of stuff. But yeah, just to kind of what John said, you know, thanks again for everyone putting this together. Love being part of the program. And, you know, again, I think every opportunity we get out there to be visible in the most positive way, you know, so, you know, obviously not to make problems for anybody and not to be that liability that we were all so afraid of being. But I think, you know, putting yourself out there and, you know, doing the job for people to see. And, you know, John has a great thing that I want to do next time I go out there, you know, having like business cards, or in his case, it's kind of little wooden chips where people can follow up with the work. But, you know, making it a point that when we send artists out there that A, you know, people don't forget that we were out there. And then B, hopefully that all the things they hear about us being out there were good things. I hope that the two of those things combined will just continue to open doors for the program.
Well said, sir. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, of course.